So I recently got a new game, Omega Race, and I was originally going to do a gameplay demo of it. But when I was playing with the game earlier, it made me think a little bit more about things like controllers. So I wanted to digress a little bit and talk about the various game controllers. I think everybody is familiar with joysticks, and I hope this particular joystick is iconic enough that everybody would recognize it, even if you've never played on an Atari 2600. I hope it's just visually recognizable. Very simple joystick, a fire button, and there were other Atari style joysticks. This is a third-party style joystick which I've used in other videos. It's a little bit nicer to control. It has lots of buttons on it, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they all do the same because the Atari joystick only has one fire button. But the controller for Omega Race used something called a paddle controller, and they were called paddle controllers because they were the controllers you would use on the very earliest home video games like Pong and those other games. They're called paddle games, and the controller, of course, is called a paddle. And they're very simple controllers. You could actually build one yourself. Inside is a button and a pot, and this wheel spins in one direction, it has a definite stop, and the other direction it has a definite stop. And they're very simple controllers, and I am sure this type of controller predates the joystick by several years. They don't work very well, and they need to be cleaned, and I'll open it up in a moment. Inside of them, though, is something called a pot, or a potentiometer is the full name. If you've ever taken apart any old electronic equipment, you might recognize them. There are 1, 2, 3 terminals, and this spins in one direction. You can hear the stop. Spins in the other direction. You can hear the stop. And they're very simple devices. These are very prone to failure, especially over a long period of time, such as 30 years. And without getting into electronics theory or anything like that, inside is a carbon track which connects the outside terminals, and there is a small metal finger that touches that carbon track, which connects to the middle terminal. And over time, that carbon track could oxidize, the metal finger could oxidize or break, or just any number of things. So they're very prone to failure. And they actually sell something called contact cleaner, which you can spray inside and spin it around a little bit. And I don't have contact cleaner, so what I did try to use is something else called isopropyl alcohol, which everybody should be familiar with. This is like the liquid version of duct tape. Duct tape fixes everything, while isopropyl alcohol fixes everything electronic. So you just dunk it in there, spin it around a little bit, smoosh it around, try to get it as clean as possible. You really can't open it. There's no screws to get inside of it. You could pry it open if you wanted to, but sometimes that's more trouble than it's worth. So you would just try to use that. So I did that earlier, and it didn't really help a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is open this real fast so you can take a look inside of the paddle controller. Take this screw here. And this screw here. Pop the back off. And that's pretty much it. This is a single pull, single throw, momentary switch for the fire button. And in the middle is the pot. And if I spin the wheel, hopefully you can see the core inside, the center inside spinning around. An interesting thing to note about this particular configuration is they're only using 2 terminals. 1, 2. The third terminal is not being used, so this is actually being used in a rheostat style variable resistor as opposed to a true potentiometer. Now I should be able to find a replacement pot for these if that proves to be the case. Very standard parts, Jameco and other places like that. I don't know if you can see on that stamp there, it says 1 mega. So this is a 1 meg pot, and I should be able to find that style pot in that value, Jameco or Mouser or something like that. If it comes down to it, I don't know if I'll be able to mess around with it to make it work a little better. Another interesting thing about these controllers is they always come in pairs of 2. Paddles always come in pair of 2, and they connect to the connector, the same connector, but there's always 2. If you ever see a controller that looks like this with only 1 controller and it says driving wheel or driving or anything like that, it's not a paddle. The driving wheel is completely different. The driving wheel actually is continuous 360 as opposed to a paddle which stops in each direction. There are 2 different electronics inside, and they do not work with one another. So anyways, that's enough about paddles. This is Omega Race. This is a video game from the early 1980s. It was one of my more favorite video games that I played in the arcades. I liked it a lot, which is why I bought this as a Commodore version. This is the second VIC-20 game I owned. The first game I owned was Radar Rat Race. I got that as a gift with the VIC-20, but this I bought on my own because I liked the arcade game a lot. There was also later on the Commodore 64 version, basically the same thing, but it is a very good port of an arcade game. It's a very simple game, so you really can't go wrong with it. So I will take this and then plug it into the back of my Commodore 60. I'm sorry, that's not a Commodore 64, that's a VIC-20. Plug it into the back of the VIC-20 like this. And I'll turn the light off so I can point it at the monitor. There's the monitor. And I will turn the monitor on. Wait for it to go into its startup. And when I go into the game, you'll see how the ship sometimes jitters on its own. Sometimes it doesn't turn when I'm turning the wheel. So I will turn on the game, and you will see Omega Race, copyright 1982 by Commodore, copyright 1981 by Bally. And you have the option to control it with the paddle or the joystick. Since the arcade version used the paddle, it's very different to use controlling it with a joystick. It's just not made for a joystick. There's also some descriptive text after the screen, which is like a story. I'll let the screen text fill up and then I'll read it. You can read along if you can. And basically as it scrolls, I'll read it. It says, in the year 2003, 10 years ago, the Omegan system developed a method of training its warriors to protect their star colonies. Over the city of Komar, android-controlled fighters raced to engage and destroy these Omegan warriors. And the next screen will show you the points spread for each type of ship. And there's different ships and so on. So I can press either F3 to go to the paddles, or I can press the fire button, and the wheel would spin the ship. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. Sometimes it jitters. saw that jitter like that. I'm not even touching the controller and it's jittering. That's because of the pot. And the button, let this guy blow me up. The fire button is basically press it once to fire, press and hold to thrust. And that's the extent of the game. The arcade version is what's called a vector graphics. Wow, I can't believe I got to the second screen, the third screen. That's pretty much the game. I would like to blame most of that on the controllers being crappy, not working well, but I also know some of that's me not working well. It's been probably 25 years since I've played this game, so I'm sure my twitch reflexes have faded over the years. But anyways, that is Omega Race on a Commodore VIC-20, and also using the paddle style controllers. Thanks for watching.